Hi, this is What Causes Low Self-Esteem Part 1. This is in conjunction with my online book. Please check it out. It's at understandselfesteem.com. So the question is, what causes low self-esteem? First thing I'm going to say is that chapter 1 of my book is going to be dealing with the question of how of what I call a self-esteem mechanism and how this mechanism has developed. I believe that all humans have this mechanism and that it's developed over thousands of years, tens of thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years in order to help our species survive. So part 1 is going to be looking at the evolutionary background to this self-esteem mechanism. I'm going to open by saying I think that when we have troubles with our emotions, when we have serious troubles with emotions, and I think people who have serious emotional health problems, we often wonder why we can't control our emotions. I remember speaking to somebody recently with who's had very severe OCD when they've been growing up, and they said to me, I wish I could just control my emotions. Why, with all our intelligence as human beings, why can't we just suppress these difficult feelings? And I think we often wish that we could just get rid of the bad feelings. So really, in this discussion about the self-esteem mechanism, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be trying to show you that this is a mechanism which human beings have developed for a reason. It actually contributes to our survival as a species. And so really I want to look at that mechanism, how it's developed and what it does and how it operates. I believe it's pretty much like the hunger mechanism. When we're hungry, it means that we need food, and we go and get food, and then the hunger is satiated, and then we're not hungry anymore. And I believe the self-esteem mechanism is very similar. If we have not had, if the self-esteem mechanism is not nourished, then it's like we become hungry, but then we need to nourish the self-esteem mechanism to increase our self-esteem. So we get lower self-esteem when the mechanism isn't nourished properly, and if we nourish it properly, then our self-esteem should increase. And I want to say that I believe it's there for a reason, and these two videos are going to be looking at the evolutionary reason why I believe that these mechanisms have developed, which is a background for the book, which then looks at how to understanding self-esteem better. So, first thing I'm going to say is this. There's many different kinds of animals that have used different mechanisms to increase their survival chances. Now, some animals operate very much as on their own, and they hide and they operate on their own, and they wait for their prey, and they might jump out and surprise their prey and catch them in that way. So there's some animals that very much have survived by operating individually. However, many animals and many species have survived as a result of their capacity to operate as a group. Now, it's easy to think of lots of animals that have survived as a result of operating in groups. One that comes to mind straight away is fish. If you think of fish in shoals, they have huge shoals they hang around in. When a predator comes, the predator might grab and eat a few of the fish, but there's so many fish that most of them survive. So it's a kind of a survival by numbers type situation. And there's wolves in their packs, is another example. I guess lions and their prides might be similar, although I think the males often hang around on their own. The females hang around in big groups. But there's lots of examples there. A really simple example actually is just in terms of crops. If you think about we've selectively bred many crops, and a lot of our development as a species has come about as a result of our having created very intricate agricultural methods of rearing agricultural produce. A good example is wheat. If you took some wheat and you threw it onto the ground, it probably wouldn't survive for the simple reason that birds would just come and eat it. But the way that we have made our crops survive is very simply we have huge fields full of crops, and there's just not enough birds to actually eat those crops, so the majority of it survives. So again, it's survival by numbers. So anyway, we're going to look now at higher primates and human beings. Homo sapiens obviously are higher primates. Monkeys form the other sort of major higher primates. Basically, higher primates have survived very much as mainly as a result of their capacity to operate in groups. And particularly one of the things that biologists believe is that there's a big difference between higher primates and other animals. One of the key differences is that higher primates have developed what we call the outer cortex of the brain, which is filled with grey matter. And this grey matter is able to deal with very complicated problem-solving situations. And many biologists believe that the reason that higher primates have developed this complicated grey matter in this outer cortex is because one of the key differences between higher primates and other animals is that they have far more complicated social interactions and social arrangements and customs that need to be followed by all the members of the group. So many biologists believe that the outer cortex and this development of the brain has occurred in higher primates to enable them to negotiate very complicated social interactions. And one of the key things which they believe that has happened, which has helped higher primates survive so well, is excuse me, is they have their capacity to form allegiances with other members of the group. Now, in the group, there's often some members of the group which rise up and become stronger than other members of the group, and for the rest of the group, it's very important to form social allegiances with other strong members of the group. And each within these allegiances, they call this there's a term that's thrown around a lot called Machiavellian theory amongst biologists and psychologists, biological psychologists. And basically what it refers to is the idea that animals that help other animals are more likely to get support back for themselves. So, for example, a classic example is monkeys grooming each other. Now, why would a monkey groom another monkey? What's the point? Why would that develop as a central thing that monkeys do? Well, the theory is that monkeys who groom other monkeys will also be groomed back. So, if you're monkey number 1 and you groom monkey number 2, later on monkey number 2 will probably come back and groom you. So, it's believed that we have developed behaviours that are geared towards helping other people within the group, and that the reason for this is that we gain more support from them. So it's a two-way thing. So a lot of people say it's very selfish, but it's just a very standard thing that I think all humans understand, is that if we have good social relations with other people, then they are better to us. And so children from a very young age are taught manners as a central thing that they have to learn, because we know that if we don't have manners, people don't like us and we don't get much support from other people. And I think that's central to us as a species. And so basically, yeah, it's believed that higher primates that have had these capacities to form strong relationships when the going gets tough, when there's predators, when there's a lack of resources, the animals that have more social allegiances club together and are more likely to survive in difficult times. So animals that have got better capacity to generate and forge social connections within the group are more likely to survive. So central to the survival of higher primates, it's believed, is our capacity to negotiate and to gain strong social allegiances. And that's why it's believed that higher primates have very complicated social customs. It's all about maintaining allegiances within the group. So now, how does self-esteem fit in with this? Well, very simply, actually, I'm going to deal with that in part 2 of the video, but I'm going to say one other thing very quickly before this part of the video finishes, and that is, there's another reason why I believe the self-esteem mechanism has developed, and in part 2 I'll talk about how the self-esteem mechanism is geared to try and press us to get approval from other people within our social group. And the reason is this: there's simple animals. The simpler an animal is, the less it needs to learn in order to survive. And as long as so take for example bees or any insects, a lot of the survival the behaviours of those animals, they're born with those behaviours. So like crying is a good example with humans. Humans are just born with the capacity to cry, and many other things they do are just born with those capacities. They're passed down in our genes. So a simple animal or a simple organism like a bee, I am told, I read that a working bee has 6 weeks of working life and they do a different job in each week. but they're just born knowing these jobs. It's all in their genes. Now the problem with this is that if you're born with all these capacities, that's brilliant, but if the environment changes and you're not born with the capacities to survive the new environment, it's not very adaptive. So higher species, do not just rely on being born with these abilities to survive in their environment. They also rely on learning behaviors from their parents. So that means that they don't have to they don't have to spend thousands of years developing genes that will make them behave in a certain way. They can just literally learn behaviors straight from their parents, which means that higher primates often end up spending a lot of time, in the case of humans, orangutans similarly, 18 years with their parents, learning the behaviors that are necessary to survive within their environment. And of course, again, if you're going to learn these behaviors, it's crucial that you do what your parents teach you. If an animal just ignored everything a parent taught it, it wouldn't survive, wouldn't learn these behaviors. So I believe another reason for the self-esteem mechanism is, I haven't even said the first reason, but it kind of ties into everything I said at the beginning. But another reason for our drive to do what is learned from another reason for our drive for approval is that with children, when their parents disapprove of them, they get upset and they want their parents to approve of them. And this is actually really important because it means that children are driven to try and do what their parents want. Not all the time, obviously, but in essence, the fact that they become upset when their parents disapprove of them means that they're trying to get their parents' approval a lot. And this facilitates them and presses them to learn to do what their parents want, which I believe will then... So animals that do that, try and gain their parents' approval, will learn will learn the necessary things they need to survive in their environment. Animals that don't care about getting their parents' approval, less likely to learn the behaviours they need to survive. So that is the second reason I believe that we have this self-esteem mechanism. The first one is more just to drive us towards trying to get the approval and the allegiances of other members of the group. But I'm going to unpack that a bit further in part 2. So that's the end of this part. So if you go to part 2 now, I will look at the self-esteem mechanism in a little more depth and look at what it does and how it works. So if you move to part 2 now.